if I ever were to become a villain, this would probably be my origin story. And I would be, I don't know, I guess the ageist avenger or something. Because the story that I'm about to tell you just happened yesterday, and part of the reason I'm sharing it is because of the legitimate unrest it has left me with, and part of it is because I'm just in full-on shock and disbelief that it was even real life. So I hope that by the end of this I will have made sense. I have been thinking about this nonstop for the past probably 30 hours or something, and I don't usually ask for comments, but I'll be very interested to hear not necessarily how you feel about my story, but if anything similar has ever happened to you. And it doesn't have to be like an age rivalry, although I'm very curious as to whether or not that has happened to anyone else before to this degree. But just a situation in which you were completely rocked by someone's response to something that you didn't think was going to be as big of a deal. Okay, let's get started. So, friends, as most of you know, I'm a massage therapist. I'm currently in my office space. I rent the upper floor of a small building. I'm gonna make sure I'm actually recording. Okay, I am. So I rent the third floor, which is the topmost floor of a small-ish brick building. It's not like a gigantic high-rise or there's like a handful of businesses from the top floor, middle floor, ground floor. Okay, so I've been here in this space for over 2 years, and I haven't had really any complaints. There have been a couple things that have happened that were not favorable. For example, last year the heat went out over the winter, so it was freezing, and I'm talking like it was like 30 degrees in my office, and I had to run a little heater to try to keep my clients warm, and I was freezing while I was massaging them, so my hands were cold, and it was for like a week that went on. I mean, multiple times I came in with no heat, but I said, you know what, it is what it is. It'll be fine. He's working on fixing it. It'll be okay. He being my landlord. Now, my landlord, while I'm not going to name him, I will give you a few attributes. He is pretty short, white hair that's balding, wears glasses, kind of gives off a little bit of like an energy, you know, like he's a little electric seeming, but never has seemed in a bad way. It's always just kind of seemed like, I don't know, he just doesn't give off a calm energy, which, I mean, a lot of people don't, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like unhinged. Okay, so I didn't really think too much of it because his words to me have always been fairly docile, and we haven't even really spoken that much. When I first moved in here, he was trying to recruit me into a business group thing that he's a part of, which I think it's called like BNI, and it's pretty common in this area. I guess it's just like business people who get together and try to, you know, network and whatever, but there's like fees, and you meet heinously early on like a weekly basis, and you're supposed to meet certain quotas of like referring your clients to other people's businesses. And since I was just getting started here when he was trying to get me to do that, it just didn't make much sense. I would have been losing time and money for the pressure of, you know, having to talk my brand new clients into using the services of people I don't know. So, you know, I politely declined. On the other hand, I had offered him that he was welcome to come get a free massage anytime, and he acted like he was going to do that, but ultimately didn't. So we were kind of square, in my opinion, with that. Neither one of us took up the other one's offer, but it didn't feel like there was any bad blood or anything. So there were also a number of times in the earlier days of me being here that this man would, not often, but just a handful of times, he came into my office while I was working. Like, so I had a client on the table, and my office has like a waiting room area. The treatment room is separate, and then the room I'm in now is in the back, and I kind of use it as my own personal ASMR / break room, or whatever you want to call it. So it's not like he could see my client or anything, but I mean, just imagine that you're somewhere potentially nude. I mean, obviously there's a sheet, but you know what I mean? Like, you're in a vulnerable position because you're laying on someone's massage table, not clothed to a normal point, and trusting this person who is helping you, and you're calm and you're relaxed, and then all of a sudden you hear a door open really loudly and somebody just comes busting in. That would get my heart rate going. I would be like, what the fuck? Okay. So I had to multiple times talk to my landlord and then try to politely but firmly make him understand that, like, you can't do that. I don't mind you coming in if you need to get something or whatever, because there's like a little attic space that's here, and the only way to access it is through my office. So I mean, you know, he's the landlord, so if he needs to check something or whatever, I don't mind him doing that when I'm not working. But if I have somebody on the table, I mean, and I was brand new, so my clients were brand new, so it was just mortifying whenever that would happen. And it took a couple times until I really got it through to him, like, please don't do that. Like, don't just drop in unannounced because it's affecting my business. Okay. Aside from that, there was one other time that he came in and decided he wanted to replace a light, which was a terrible idea. And the fuse box is in my treatment room. So he moved all of my stuff, and then he must have been drilling or something, because there was just like wall debris and dust all over my shit when I came in. Like, he didn't tell me this was happening, and he didn't clean it up. He just left everything out of order and dirty. And my poor little Aspie heart was just so bothered by the disorganization and the lack of cleanliness, and the fact that it was a Monday morning, so I had like 10 minutes to like really rush and get everything set up before my first client was there. Okay, so those are some grievances that I never really got mad about, but I had to kind of be like, hey, let's don't do that. Okay, aside from that though, in 2.5 years or whatever it's been, we've really never talked. He's never here, so we don't have any reason to talk. Alright. Until recently. Last week, I want to say it was Wednesday, he called me. Yeah, it was Wednesday. He called me and let me know that they were going to be re-roofing the building, okay? Putting on a new roof. And he said, so, please, you and your clients don't park in the front parking lot on Thursday because they're dropping off the shingles. Okay, no problem. But then he also says, oh, and by the way, the roofers are finishing up another job, and then they're gonna come to our building right after that. So it could be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday that they come. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of a problem for me because I have full schedule on Saturday and Monday already. I told him though, like, I'm off Fridays and Sundays though, so if it could be one of those days, then that would be fine. But if it was gonna be on Saturday or Monday, I would need to know as soon as humanly possible. And even then, it was gonna be an annoyance because, just because someone can come to a massage on a Saturday doesn't mean that they can, if I were to try to reschedule everyone for Sunday, especially down here in the South, like, it's just not going to be an easy, oh yeah, I'll just come in another day of the week and we'll sort it all out. No. So I had to text all my Saturday clients and be like, just so you know, we may not be able to meet on Saturday because if you remember, I'm the top floor. The roof is right above my space, and roofing, pulling off shingles and using nail guns to affix new shingles is fucking loud, okay? And my landlord said as much. He just was like, I just really don't see how you could possibly give a massage on a day like that. It's just gonna be so loud. And I'm like, okay, great, thanks. Really wish you would have told me this sooner. This is what I'm thinking. I didn't say any of this. So then he calls me. It was either Thursday or Friday. I want to say Friday, but I'm not positive. He calls me back and says, hey, I got a firm day. They're coming on Tuesday. And this is in a voicemail that he says to me. And I'm like, shit, I have a full day Tuesday as well, and it's my longest work day of the week. I'm here the most amount of hours on Tuesdays. So I'm like, well, shit, I'm gonna have to rearrange all these clients, and I'm gonna lose an entire day's worth of work, and that fucking sucks. And if he'd have told me a month ago, a couple weeks ago, that this might even be happening, I could have figured out a way around it. I could have, blacked out those days so that I wouldn't have to go through the embarrassment of texting people and telling them I'm so sorry, but I can't do your appointment anymore. So I was a little irritated, but I thought, okay, I'll text all my Saturday people and tell them we're good to go, and then I'll just work on texting my Tuesday people. At least it's a few days in advance, and I'll just try to reschedule them for another time. And then the more I was thinking about it as time went on, I started thinking, he's costing me like $500 plus by missing this Tuesday. Like, this is kind of a big deal for me, and it just doesn't seem fair that this was just all of a sudden dropped on me. And I just kind of had to deal with it. But I thought, you know what? I will send him an email about it after the roof is done, because I figured that he was like crazed with the roof stuff going on, and I thought, he's been back and forth on the phone with me 20 times, and like, let me just not complicate things. I'll just make it easy for him by changing everything myself, and then I'll just get in contact with him when the project's done and just mention to him that, like, hey, I just lost a lot of money. So I sent that email, and Lord have mercy, that that was apparently not a good decision, even though I stand by it. So I sent that, I think on either Friday night or Saturday morning, something like that, maybe even Saturday evening. But before the weekend was over. Oh no, wait, so that happened on a Tuesday. Yeah, so it was that following weekend, because this was just a few days ago, and today's Tuesday again. So it's been a week since the day that I missed, and it's been a few days since I sent that email. So it was probably Friday evening that I sent it then, and I didn't hear back until yesterday. And the email that I got back was clearly not very happy with what I had said. The one thing I remember most from the email was that he put in bold, "You did not say anything about Tuesday." We'll get to that in a moment. But after he said what he said, which was, "I'll give you $33 because that's what the cost of the rent would have been for that day." He was like, "You can call me and we can talk about this further if you want to." And so I was like, okay. At this point, I still wasn't really thinking that it was like a gigantic deal. So I called him, and I even wrote little notes to myself so that I wouldn't stumble over my words when I called him. And the main thing I wanted to do with that phone call was to explain to him why I felt the way I felt, because it seemed pretty evident from his email that he didn't understand my point of view. So I wanted to tell him two things. Number one, the reason why I didn't mention Tuesday was because it was never one of the proposed options. He told me initially that it was going to be any day between Friday and Monday. Then he called me back and said, "It's happening on Tuesday." Okay. Point two was that I didn't feel from all of our communication like I had any choice in the matter. There was no sense of, does this work for you? Or is there a day that would be best for you? Or anything like that, honestly. It seemed to me, through what I felt was no fault of his own, that the roofers were going to come when they were going to come. And as someone who, I've lived through home renovations before, I've dealt with, the kind of people who come and fix your sink or whatever, they don't usually give you that much of an option. It's usually just like he was saying to me, like, they're just going to come when their previous job is done, and I don't know when that's going to be. I did not get the sense at all that there was anything that could be done about that. Because, as well, logically, if there was something that could be done about that, don't you think it would have made sense for him to say to me, "Is there a day that works best for you?" or something along those lines, to why wouldn't you just ask at that point if it was an option? Okay. Alright, so I tell him those things on the phone. I'm being super nice. I've not been mean this whole time. I haven't said, anything of like, "I can't believe you did this to me," or like whatever. I just kind of laid it out like, "Hey, here's what happened from my perspective. I wish that this had been communicated about differently. And here's the amount of money that I lost." And I said, if we can come to any sort of an agreement about my next month's rent, like some kind of a credit towards next month's rent, that would be really nice, and please just let me know if we can come to some kind of an agreement about that. Well, as soon as I finished talking about my points 1 and points 2, this man went absolutely apeshit on me, okay? He said initially that my email made it sound like I thought he owed me something. And he said, you know what? That is just such a millennial thing to do. And he starts reaming me for being a millennial. Now, this is my first mind blown moment. I'm like, is this person really judging me right now by my age? I don't think I could even compute it, because I spent like 10 years of my life working in old folks' homes where they were constantly talking, harping, educating about how to treat your elders and ageism and the fact that it's wrong to treat elderly people any different, especially poorly, of course, but just like how to look out for signs of elderly abuse and neglect and all that kinds of stuff. I mean, so it never in 1,000 years would have crossed my mind that an elderly person, because I think this guy's in his 70s at least, would speak with abuse language towards me because of my age. So a million thoughts are going through my head at once, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what kind of propaganda is this man consuming on a regular basis that he truly has an incredible stigma against people born in these years? He passionately embodied the idea that millennials are lazy, that we don't work enough, that we are spoiled, that we're entitled, just all of the stuff that I see online. But like, I almost kind of thought that it was like a joke in a sense, because I know that there are probably some people out there who look down on the generation or generations below them and say, oh, these people are not doing it how we did it back in the day, that kind of thing. But I didn't really think that there were people out there who had such extreme hatred in their hearts and really blanket categorized all millennials in this case to be exactly the same and to be crappy people. All of these thoughts are going through my head, and I'm listening to him at the same time, and he's still just railing me for being, I don't know, spoiled. He completely misinterpreted everything that I said, and he didn't even try to clarify. It wasn't like, were you trying to tell me that it's my fault or that I owe you or whatever. I would have been happy if he'd have even said, I see your point, and left it at that. I would have been doubly happy if he said, I see your point and I'll give you $100 credit for next month. That would have been like, okay, I feel good about this. I wasn't telling him, you owe me $500, because that's, what I should have made that day. So at the end of the first millennial spiel, he said to me, God, this whole thing is just ridiculous. I just still can't believe that it really happened. But he says to me, you know, you didn't really lose any money. And I'm thinking, what do you mean by that? Like, how is that even a statement? Because I missed a day of work, so naturally I lost money. I don't understand how you could justify any differently than that. I said, well, yes I did. And he said, no you didn't. And I said, well, how do you figure? I mean, I had to cancel all those appointments and reschedule them. And he said, yeah, but you did reschedule them, didn't you? I said, yeah, but that means that those people... I said, yeah, I rescheduled them, but I still lost Tuesday. And he still wasn't getting that. So then the second time I said, yes, I rescheduled them, but that means that they took spots, future spots, from potentially other people. And he says, so you mean to tell me that you're booked all the time? So now I'm like, my heart's racing, I'm nervous, I'm having all these like trauma responses to being attacked, and I'm trying to stay like level-headed and present in the conversation because I just didn't want to freeze up and say nothing. But I'm like, what the fuck does this guy mean? Like, of course I stay booked. If I didn't stay booked, I wouldn't make money. I wouldn't be able to run a business. Like, what is happening right now? I just don't get it. So he says, I said, well, yeah. I said, usually, you know, and I told him this in the email as well. So I really think he just skimmed it and didn't really understand what I was saying. But I said, yes, you know, I usually am booking 2 weeks in advance, and some days I have a wait list, and I mean, that's just that. And I said, you know, I'm not gonna come in on one of my off days, you know, last minute to make up for this, because I can't guarantee that those people are even gonna be able to come. And he's still just out of his mind, thinking, I guess, that I'm lying about having a full schedule. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. And I said, you know, my point was that I wish we could have set this up for a day that I didn't work. And I said, I'm off 3 days a week, so I feel like we could have made something happen. And he said, well, why do you only work 4 days a week? Irrelevant, number one, which I should have. I wish that I had the presence of mind to say, like, that doesn't pertain to this conversation. But I just told him, like, well, it's hard on my body. I can't really work more than that. And he was like, well, I wish I could have a 4-day work week. That sounds nice. I'm like, is this person throwing a tantrum at me because of my work schedule? And I should have also said, even though we shouldn't have even gotten into this part of the conversation because it really was irrelevant, but I could have also told him that, like, that's a very normal work week for a massage therapist. Most massage therapists that I know of only work 3 to 4 days per week, if they're working full, like, 8-hour days. And for some people that's too much. So I'm like, well, I was trying to, like, justify myself, which I wish I hadn't done, because it makes it seem like, you know, he had some kind of a power over me and that I had to answer to him in some way. So I was just too frazzled, really, to, like, even make sense of any of it at the time. But I said to him, well, you know, one of those days isn't really an off day. Like, I still have to do marketing and advertising and like keeping up with my clients and all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, no, you don't. You know, if you're always full, if you've always got clients, why would you need to do marketing and advertising? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what? How do you think I keep people coming in the door? You can't just abandon every client and expect them to come back. Like, you still have to. I mean, you've got website maintenance. God, these cars are so loud. You've got website maintenance. You've got, any emails, blog posts, any kind of Facebook, Google, making sure everything's up to date. Nothing's broken. You don't have any links or pages that are broken. I mean, just there's so much extra stuff that you have to do. And then figuring out, am I on track this month? How much am I making compared to last month? Just analytics, essentially, of your business to make sure that you're fucking, profitable and doing a good job. Not to mention, like, I clean my space. I don't have a cleaner. There is a cleaner that comes and does like the bathrooms downstairs for the building, but no other space is considered common space. So I vacuum and dust and clean my entire floor myself. That takes time. I have to, deal with making sure my products are all in stock, that I have everything I need and want, etc. You get the point, okay? Running a business, you don't ever really have a break. Like, you're constantly the only one managing everything. And I get incessant phone calls and texts and messages on Google and shit. I need to move this, I need to do that, can I schedule an appointment, blah blah blah. Like, it's not just a set it and forget it type thing. You have to be active. So that was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. But he was so upset with me for having a 4-day work week, and I think that triggered his millennials are bad and lazy thing again. So he starts again going off at me for being an entitled millennial and just telling me that, like, he cannot believe that I would, he says, well, why don't you, come in on a different day? And he says to me, if you have so many clients and your books are so full, why don't you work more than 4 days a week? And this is after I've already, like, he already tried to hit me with that, and I told him, like, it's hard on my body, and then explained about the administrative day. And then he comes back around to, like, why don't you work more days a week if you have all these clients? I'm like, again, I should have just said, that's not your business and is not relevant to this conversation. But I'm just thinking to myself, what the fuck? And I was like, well, 4 days a week is all I can do. Like, it's not my choice. It's just as much as I can do. And he just wouldn't hear anything that I had to say. Everything I said only made him more mad. So he's going on and on about how I'm this stupid, shitty millennial. And then he hits me with, do you think so-and-so from a tax firm downstairs would ask me for money for this situation? And I was like, no, but he didn't lose clients. Like, they still worked that day. He's like, well, I bet it interfered with their work. And I'm like, how are you helping yourself right now? But I'm like, yeah, probably, but they didn't have clients coming in, and like, I'm the one on the top floor anyway, so they had some kind of a buffer to that situation. But I'm also thinking in my head, like, you know, one of the women who works at the place he was talking about downstairs said something to me last week about how it's really not very good timing that he's doing this right now because they have their biggest deadline of the year, like that weekend or whatever. So I'm like, well, I know that it bothered them too, but I didn't say anything. And then he says, you know, and he's just yelling nonsense. And then he ends up saying something about how he asked. I think I might have said to him, well, you know, all I'm saying is, like, you could have asked. And he starts telling me that it's my responsibility, that I should have been the one to say to him, that I should have told him my schedule, and that he was so, you know, I was the one he was working around. And I said, well, my hours are publicly posted. And what I meant by that was, even if you couldn't get in touch with me in time, or you didn't want to, for whatever reason, ask me to my face, this information is easy to Google. Like, it's not like I was hiding. That was my point. It's not like I was keeping from him a secret, like, oh, he doesn't know I usually work on Tuesdays, so I'm just not gonna work and then I'm gonna ask him for money. Like, in his head, I think he thinks that's what I did, like it was like a setup or something. He would not accept the fact that I just genuinely didn't think there was an option for me to say, you have to do this on Wednesday because I'm off on Wednesday. And I told him, I said, it's not even in my personality to do that. I'm not the kind of person who's gonna get on the phone with you when you're telling me what's going on and say, oh, you can't do that. You have to do that on Wednesday. Like, he would have been probably just as pissed if I'd have done something like that. So it's like, you know, because he has this whole sentiment of, like, who do you think you are kind of thing. Oh my God, it was just so, it's like frustrating in retrospect, but in the moment I was just blown away at the way that he was talking to me. Like, never in my life has someone spoken to me like that, so dehumanizing and rude, that was like genuinely serious, and someone who knew they were gonna have to see me again. And let alone, like, this is my landlord, so there's a weird power dynamic there. Oh my God, the whole thing just got so out of control, and it went from bad to worse, because when I said that comment about, like, my hours are publicly posted, and, like, there were, again, my point was, there were ways for us to avoid this miscommunication, and my entire wish was for the communication to have been handled differently. I wish you would have told me sooner. I wish, you know, anything. But he said, I cannot believe that you would tell me to Google your hours. And I'm like, oh my God. No. That's not what I'm saying. I said, I didn't say that, and that's not what I meant. And he's like, that is, and again, he's reaming me for being a millennial, just telling me how, you know, just entitled. He kept using entitled and, like, selfish. And I'm like, you don't even know me, for one. For two, how am I lazy and entitled and selfish when I'm running a successful business and I pay you on time every fucking month? How do you think those things go together? It's not a piece of cake running your own business. So the fact that he could even make it make sense in his own head that I'm simultaneously a bottom feeding leech who's also renting office space from him, I'm like, he was just mad. He was just genuinely mad and wanted to vent all of this anger onto me, and it really wouldn't have mattered what I said at all, because he wasn't hearing me. He was hearing what he wanted to hear, and he ended up telling me that, at some point in this whole fiasco, he said that he asked. I said, well, then why didn't you ask them? When he was saying, like, I bet it disturbed their workday, I said, well, then why didn't you ask them? And he said, I did. I asked everyone. And I said, okay, well, then why didn't you ask me? And he was like, just nothing legitimate to say to that. And come to find out, like yesterday, I actually had a small break in between my clients, which is rare for me. So I went out and I had to run an errand to the UPS store to return something, and I was sick to my stomach, but I also knew that I was like hungry and had low blood sugar. So I was like, I'm just gonna get like a mini sandwich from Jersey Mike's and try to make myself eat it before I have to continue working for the rest of the day. And when I came back in from running those errands, the woman was at the front desk. And I always say hi to her because I like her, I like them. And this is the business he was telling me and comparing everything to. And she saw that I was upset. She said, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. But you know how, like, when you're upset and someone asks you if you're all right, you're like, and you just automatically burst. So that happened. And she was like, are you tired? And I said, I think I am tired. And she was like, oh, what's wrong? And so I told her what happened, and probably looked silly while doing it, but I just couldn't. I mean, I was genuinely really upset, like distraught yesterday after this conversation, because it was just so mean and unfair, for one, and irrational, and then I just had this thought of like, oh my god, I still have a lease here for like multiple years. I think 2 years left on the most recent lease that I signed. So this man has a power over me technically for another couple more years, and I just wanted to run away and hide and never come back to this building again, which made me sad because like I love my office and I've loved being a tenant here, and I just felt like I ruined it, even though logically I know that what I was saying made sense. And honestly, I feel like, and maybe I'm off base about all of this, maybe I'm wrong, but like I feel like most people would have felt the same way I did. Like, your lack of communication cost me money and reputation with my clients that were already scheduled. Don't you feel like that's unfair? Like, is there any way we can settle up about that? Because I'm feeling shafted in this situation. And he was just really pissed that I felt shafted. And the woman downstairs said, and my husband said, and now it makes sense to me, even though I didn't think about this before, but like probably the money was like the main issue. But it's like, even if he just said, I'll give you $50 off your rent for the next 3 months, 2 months, something like that, like it still would have been a nice gesture for the fact that he did put me out. Whether he wants to admit or acknowledge that or not, that's a fact. And I don't know, I guess I'm spiraling right now, but if this was in the Am I the Asshole forum of Reddit, I mean, I really don't think I'm the asshole in this situation. And again, maybe I'm out of my mind, but like, doesn't this all make sense? Like, am I being gaslit here? Like, I don't understand. I just really don't understand. And, you know, I never got mad. I never raised my voice. I never said anything angry. In the end, I just said to him, you know, if you had, because he ended up yelling at me that he had to pay extra for them to come on Tuesday. And I'm thinking, like, what? Like, I've never heard of anything like that before. But I was like, look, if you had to pay them extra, don't even worry about the $33 of rent or whatever it was. I said, you know, you can just keep it and we'll just leave it at that. And he said, thank you, and hung up. And so my point about Cindy was that unprompted, she said to me that she had mentioned to him previously that she was kind of upset that he had decided to do the roofing project when he did, because he used to be a tax person apparently, and so he should have known that that week was like crunch time for them. And when she had said that to him, he apologized to her and was like, you know what, I've just been away from the business for so long, I just didn't even think about it, and I'm sorry, you know, that was my bad, essentially. And I'm like, okay, you can be so nice to them, but because of, I don't know, my age, or the fact that I stood up for myself, or the fact that you apparently don't think I run a legitimate business, or whatever, you're just gonna shit on my entire life. I don't know. I am just still, I feel like I have legitimate, like, I don't want to use the word PTSD because that's a really serious thing, but I am having bodily reactions to just being here now. The thought of coming back to work, to this building, makes, I mean, just thinking about it now, my heart is racing. I'm getting a headache over my eye. Yesterday, I didn't even want to leave my office, like, to go run that errand and get some food. I was so scared that he was gonna, like, show up here and shit on me in person or something. Even though I never run into him here, like, I couldn't leave my office for the longest time. I was just so nervous. Like, I wasted most of my break crying in here and worrying about just opening the door. Like, I was terrified because the way that he was talking to me was just so savage and, like, angry. I wish I would have, like, recorded the phone call because it was just that unbelievable. And I wouldn't have even minded if he'd have just said, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm just, you know, I'm not doing that, and next time you need to tell me what works for you. And I would have been like, okay, like, you know, that sucks, but it is what it is. But no, it turned into a whole another thing, just bashing me to death verbally. And I started just feeling yesterday like everything is hostile. I'm scared of my phone. Anytime I would get like a text or something, I would jump because I was scared it was going to be him. I've been terrified to open my email because I'm worried he's going to send me a follow-up email to shit on me some more. I've been scared of my environment. Like, I know one day in retrospect this won't be as big of a deal, but holy shit. Having someone become completely unglued on you when you don't expect it is hands down like one of the most truly petrifying experiences that you can have in an average life. It's psychotic, and especially for someone who grew up like I did and has the true trauma that I have. And I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who, if you got yelled at by anyone, it would affect you majorly because it brings up a lot of stuff. I don't know. Somebody else might have had this conversation and been able to just walk away and laugh, but as someone who anger was a big weapon and precursor to further pain in my life, this really just fucked me up. And part of the reason I wanted to make a story time about it, or decided to, was because sometimes just getting it out there makes it less scary, and saying it and thinking about it differently can just be a helpful tool to getting your courage back and feeling like you can stand without your knees shaking anymore. And I hope that I can, from now on, after saying this, I'm feeling a little more brave and bold after getting this all out there, and I'm imagining some of you nice people giving me the courage, people I know out there who always leave me nice comments, and thank you to you guys, to just kind of hold my head high and know that I wasn't of poor character while all this was happening. I was apologetic and kind, and I guess there's really nothing else I can do aside from that, and he should be the one who feels some type of way about what he did, because Jesus Christ. So, are any of you stupid entitled millennials like moi? Have any of you been through a situation where someone has absolutely annihilated you verbally for something you weren't expecting? Leave it in the comments below.